Hello, entrepreneurs, dreamers, business owners, and happy people with high hopes. Welcome to Cashflows with your host, Cash Matthews.
All right, good morning. Welcome to Cashflows. I'm Cash Matthews, your host, and we're very happy that you're here today. You know, I think this is podcast number 111 that we've done together, or close to that.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Something like that. And our guest today is Michelle Hammons, and we'll visit with her just in a moment. But I got a great show planned for the day. Kenneth, how are things in your world before we get going?
Things are pretty good.
Yeah.
The winds are sweeping down the plain.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah.
I think that's enjoyable.
It is.
And
unless you have allergies.
Or a car that has green stuff all over it.
That's also true.
Yeah, okay. Well, hey, we're glad you're here today. The Cashflows podcast is designed for, as the intro says, happy people and entrepreneurs and people moving forward. And, you know, our method is on the board behind us, but it is fire, ready, aim. And we love to talk to people about taking the next step in their journey, whether that's personal, family, health, spiritual. But of course, we talk a lot about business because, you know, a lot of us are in the business world. And this idea was spawned out of a networking group that actually the three of us helped build in the local community that's grown to 7,600 people, the Business Owners Networking Group, the BONG. For those who find that funny, I had never seen a bong, didn't know what it was. I missed out on that in the 70s. I was busy. And but I have since learned what a bong is, and I've heard all the jokes. It's a hit. And
yeah.
Still not that funny, too.
I don't know. There's several other jokes, too. I was going to say them, but I can't think of
them.
Well,
you're welcome to throw a joke in there, Michelle, you as well. But anyway, so we're going to fire, aim, ready today. Our guest today is Michelle Hammons. And this is going to be a great conversation. Today we get to talk about the world of professional coaching.
Yes.
We have a lot of armchair quarterbacks. Ooh, I saw this on YouTube. And a lot of Dr. Googles out there who self-diagnose. Man, I am a fan of coaching. And I'm a fan of sports, and I'm a fan of business. Now that I've been in business over 40 years, I look back, and some of those moments for me, Michelle, that were the greatest were at the hands of somebody who could see what I cannot see.
Yes.
And the value in that for me in my career is just immeasurable. And, you know, and we all work with entrepreneurs, the thousands of entrepreneurs in the BONG and just out in the world. And everybody's trying to find the way.
Yes, absolutely.
And, you know, and it doesn't matter what level of success you've had or are having, man, a coach is a good idea. And I'm a sports nut, and I'm a golf nut more importantly, but I've studied many great athletes. And that we get to talk about coaching today, for me, I am excited about this. And if you're listening to this and your life or business or weight or whatever is not where it ought to be, find somebody who can help you. You know, all the athletes, so many of the business people will credit a mentor type. And I, you know, think a lot of people just getting in business, they're worried about the cost of the coach. And I know we're going to talk about that. But man, you ought to see the cost of not having a coach.
Yes.
And it's the difference between where you are and that ultimate dream level. And that's the cost of not coach.
That's right.
And so we're going to talk about today. So Michelle, thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you for being here. I'm excited to see your face.
I am glad to be here as well. And I don't know, maybe this is what heaven looks like, and maybe we're all here.
Yeah, maybe.
I could go with that. Well, tell us a little bit. I know we mentioned this before. We met at the BONG. Just give us a run up to how you got to this spot in your life. And you're a professional coach.
Yes, I'm a high performance executive coach.
Okay, we want to hear the words. High performance executive coach.
Yes.
Okay.
And I've been doing that full time for the past 7 years.
Wow.
And working with people all over the world in the community and in every state, almost in the union. And so I've logged about 5,000 hours of one-on-one conversations in that time. And the depth and breadth of that experience gives you all these new insights, right? There's one thing to have a coach, but then when you immerse yourself at that level, you get these new distinctions about human behavior and what drives us. And so I got started in coaching from actually a coach that's one of our BONG members, Aaron.
Oh man, one of my favorites.
Aaron and I we go back a long way. And I remember this moment I was sitting in Aaron's office. I hope she'll be listening to this. And she said, "Oh, have you ever thought about being a coach?" And this was when I was a corporate leader. And I was like, well, what would I do as a coach? I didn't know about the industry.
Right.
That's really, and that's why the basis of our talk today is just to really help people understand what this is and how it helps people. And so it was really that spark, right? That blind spot that I'd never heard of. I didn't know. From there, I started learning and understanding. And there is a lot of different flavors
Right.
we're in springtime. So the different varieties of coaches out there that all do amazing work. And it's $1 billion industry.
Wow.
And it's growing. It's on a growth trajectory. And so when we think about like the wellness industry of coaching or corporate coaching, there's personal development coaching. There's these different kind of flavors that are out there. But
Right.
I always like to highlight, this is no joke. This is a big business. There's a lot of money that's being invested because the value that comes out of it, as you said, it's not the cost of having a coach, it's the cost if you don't have one.
I agree with that.
And so really my journey started with having a coach. And in that same time of 7 years, I've never been without a coach. I've had the privilege and opportunity to work with some amazing high-level coaches.
Well, if you've worked with Erin Garcia, you've worked with one of the best.
Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, she's tremendous.
And along with others too. And so I think, though, if I were to take it back earlier, like you're saying, there's that person that unpacks the insight. I really was lucky. So I grew up here in Tulsa, and I had amazing teachers. And teachers kind of are like coaches in a big
For
way.
sure. Oh, yeah.
And I had this incredible coach squad of teachers, is what I would say. And so we grew up in an elementary school that moved into Wright Junior High, which had an auditorium. And our drama teacher, Mrs. Jenkins, every class we would go down to the auditorium and she'd get us on stage. We were on stage every day as part of our class. The gift she gave everyone that crossed her path was this gift of no fear of public speaking.
Wow.
Which is an incredible gift that we didn't know we were getting. That's had a lifetime impact on me personally.
Sure.
And so we never know that moment. And I always grew up with teachers and coaches that they saw gold, they saw blue. They didn't see anything but being the best, excelling
Right.
for excellence. And so that was really where my coaching got rooted probably is as a kid. And a lot of us, we relate to that because we have kids that, we get a soccer coach or a gymnastic coach or a speech coach, whatever it may be. We gladly pour out to our kids to get that. But as adults, we don't often think about that.
Mrs. Jenkins.
Yeah.
I think everybody needs a Mrs. Jenkins. And just in my schooling career, there were 3 or 4 people that just stood out. I don't even know if they know it. Mm-hmm. Like what a profound impact they had on my life. I'm 14 years old when I get on the debate team and a man stands up and says, my goal in this class is not to win championships, although we did. Our goal is to help you think better all the days of your life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, whoa.
Big vision.
Yeah. And, that put me on a path. And so I am so thankful for the people like Mrs. Jenkins and Keith Rogers, my debate and speech coach, and Mrs. Green, who taught me to read and was always, they're not just coaches, but they're encouragers as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she was pretty astute, right? We worked with no notes. We worked with no microphones. We had to project from the stage. She sat in the middle of the theater.
Oh my gosh.
And just that habit and routine of doing that just instilled something that literally is a value. I don't even know I could put a place, put an amount of opportunity or what it's led to in my life. It just was such a profound experience.
Do you think that a coach can help you change your belief pattern, your belief system? Because that's what happened for me. I didn't realize it at the time, but in your world in coaching, can a coach help that belief system at a very, very impactful level?
Yeah. So how I think about a coaching session is I'm listening deeply to everything you say, hanging on to every word. And as humans, we throw away a lot of our thoughts. I could never do that. That's not something I could ever achieve, right? We have these words that kind of like fall out of our vocal cords, and we don't realize what we say to ourselves. So can a coach change your belief? I think the answer to that's no. Can a coach help you see what your belief is so you can make the change?
There you
Absolutely.
go. Right.
Because coaching, different than like consulting or counseling, is about you making identifying and making the change.
Right.
And it's like this tease out process We're always teasing out the words. What does that mean when you say this word? What is that definition for you? Definitions of words are very different for different people.
Yeah, because of the way we perceive everything.
Absolutely. And so when we talk about courage or fear or whatever that word might be, there's different definitions that sit behind it.
I am never again praying for courage, ever. Like, I'm never doing that. Whenever I pray for courage, the only place you need courage is when fear is present.
Right. It only shows up when fear is present.
Hey, God, give me some courage. All right, here's some flying spider monkeys with flaming arrows. So.
Yeah. I like the visual is like, here's the fear meter. And only when the fear meter rises can courage rise above.
Yeah, there's no need for courage when,
Yeah.
When your car is parked.
It's like your inner superhero is how I think about courage.
Yeah, very cool. So talk about the most powerful advice that you've ever received on your end that maybe changed your perspective on how coaching works and how it affects people.
So I think it's just this word possibility, right?
Ooh.
Possibility is, there's really very few things that are impossible,
right?
If we start to just look at it in kind of a black and white term. But just this question or idea of what's possible here, what's possible for you. And so having Aaron seed that little mustard seed all those years ago, I worked with a coach that he recently passed away, Dan Miller from Franklin, Tennessee. He was amazing. And he said, what does this situation make possible? What's possible here? And whether it's you're dealing with something negative or positive, there's possibility that can come from that. Right. Sometimes we don't always see it in the moment. So I think it's like, well, if somebody else has done it, then that's possible for me.
So his question was, what is possible?
Yeah. What does this situation make possible?
Okay.
Kind of just in being in the mix of things. What does this make possible?
Right.
Might make a new relationship possible, a new idea possible, a new connection possible. And there's a relational aspect to what we're talking about, that it's important to have community. It's important to have people around you that are going to cheer you on, share insights, because a coach is going to be your advocate. They're not going to be your spouse or your friend. They're going to love on you and be nice to you, but they're also going to call you out. That's what you're paying for.
And don't you think that we need, as entrepreneurs, we can be as disconnected as we want to be? And many of us are solo pilots out there trying to fight the world, just on our own.
Yeah.
But I mean, a coach, we need people to call us out.
We do. And it's funny that you bring up a pilot, because on the way here this morning, I was thinking it's kind of like a co-pilot, right? The reason why an airplane has a co-pilot is in case something starts to get off track, right? That's going to support the pilot, support the systems, do the checks, have a second set of eyes. And it's a pretty critical thing when you're on an airplane.
For sure.
Right. I've been on occasion to be in a single piloted airplane, and it was a different experience. My attention was much more aware that there was no co-pilot.
Right.
But it is kind of co-piloting along. And so I think it's that place of possibility. I have a belief, kind of going back to your question about belief systems. If someone else has done it, I can do it.
Right. If one can, all can.
Now, that doesn't mean that I have these Olympic aspirations in my mind when I say that. I just mean if someone's proved it out and they've been able to achieve it, that if I do the same things relatively, I should be able to achieve something similar.
Yeah.
So the possibility is there.
It's kind of like when they broke the 4-minute mile the first time.
Right.
It took, hundreds of years. Nobody thought you could do it and your body would die. And then the fellow did, and I apologize, I forgot his name, Jim something or other. And he broke the 4-minute mile, and within a year, I think 3 or 4 more people did as well. And now that's just the standard.
Yeah.
And belief changes based on your perception of possibility, which you were saying.
Yeah, and it's this expansion. I'll give you a recent example, and I'm not good with athletic names, but I watched the championship ice skater this past week or so, and he performed 6 quads in his routine flawlessly.
Wow.
He set a new bar that's never been done in this industry.
Wow.
In the skating industry. And I watched that performance, and I was like, now there's new possibility.
Right.
Right. Now every skater that gets on the ice with him in competition knows they got to raise their game.
Right.
Or they're going to not have a higher score, because just the technical capability of what he raised the bar on was just, it was astounding. It was amazing if you haven't seen it.
Now everybody knows it's possible.
Yeah.
And that's what your mentor said from Franklin, Tennessee. What's possible because of this?
Yeah. What does this make possible? And those, if you apply that to your decision making, so some people feel stuck. Right?
Oh, man.
Stuck, right? I always say, no one's holding you hostage. Like there's possibility here. What do you need to explore? And it's that exploration that starts the change.
Very cool. So I think people have misconception about what coaching is, what a professional, I like that word, high performance coach. I mean, that's, most people think about survival and success, but high performance means getting the most out of your vehicle that you can, like operating within the realm of whatever you're capable of. And I think high performance coach, what a great name, high performance coaching. But I think people still have misconceptions about it. They might be afraid to talk to you because, I mean, I know there's a lot of reasons they wouldn't cut money, or I don't have the time, or I'm not ready for that. I mean, what are the misconceptions about coaching?
There's a lot of misconceptions. And even I love the word high performance because that was an orientation I had. But I do think of race car drivers when I think, like, I grew up with people in the racing industry. So it's like fine-tuning the engine, right?
Right.
So high performance, if you're not in those capacities, it kind of has a different definition. That's why definitions are important. But the definition we work with it's a very clear definition. It's sustained improvement over the long term above standard norms while maintaining your well-being and your relationships. So we're looking at it holistically. And that's from the High Performance Institute, which is where my certification comes from. And so that's a really important definition because we're not looking for peak performance. That's not sustainable.
Right.
We can all go to a peak, but you see that again and again. People get to the top of their game, but they don't sustain it.
Right.
So that's not what we're talking about in everyday ways. That's something that you put things in place that you're building and sustaining on all levels.
To create a consistent result rather than a one-time grand slam.
So I think even that is one of the top misconceptions is like, I'm going to get in there and kind of go fast and hard at things and make a big difference in a short period of time. That's actually, it's kind of the fable, right? The turtle and the hare.
Right.
The turtle wins because he's consistent.
Yep.
He's pacing. He's taking care of his energy. He's in that story. There's so much power as it relates to coaching. But some of the questions that I often get, I just was in an Uber in California recently, and he said, why on earth would anybody who's doing well need a coach? I said, because they know they want to do better.
Right.
And they know that they're not necessarily in the place to understand and tease out that next level to really have the clarity that they need or the vision they need or the goals they need or the connections they need to get there. And he was like, oh, okay. So I think that's one misconception is, and then the other side of that is everything's broken. You're in a rut. Your life is, going down in a flame. And that is a time that a coach can make a big difference, but that's not generally who I'm working with. Most of the people I'm working with, they're working well in their life,
Right.
But they're wanting to excel and go better. Sometimes people will go through a big life change. I know that that's happened for you. And all of a sudden you get a wake-up call, right? Life looks very different on the other side of a wake-up call. Right. And it's like, I know I had that wake-up call when I was 32 years old, when my mom passed away. And just that moment that she crossed the finish line, I was like, wow, if I only have 20 years left, because this year, I'm 54 this year, and my mom I'm the same age as my mom was when she passed away.
Oh, boy.
So this is like a big kind of anniversary year in my mind because I'm like, did I live my life the last 20 years and play full out? Because that was my commitment in that moment. It was like, wow, I'm not waiting until I retire. I'm not waiting on anything.
Good for you.
This time of 20 years is going to fly by, which it has.
Oh, man, in a minute.
It does. And so every minute counts. And so I like the focus of time because when we start to appreciate our time, then we start to see how much we can change.
Right.
And so that the misconception, I think, is sometimes something has to be really broken or messed up. Sometimes people go through a divorce or they go through a loss of someone or they go through a job loss or change. And by the way, for those of you out there, anyone that I've worked with that's gone through those things, there's always something better on the other side if you take control and drive where you want to go, right?
Yeah, there's no snooze button on the wake-up call.
No. And I think
It's like it's time to go.
I think the other thing is people kind of have this idea of like it's out of reach or it's unaffordable or it's only for people that are doing really well. Just an everyday person like me wouldn't benefit from this. And that's just simply untrue. Like we are all, like I love to use our fingerprints because we're uniquely made.
Amen.
And we are not meant to be like anyone else. God gave us a purpose on this earth, and you may need to continue to work on fulfilling it and figuring out what it is. But you have you're put here for a reason to connect with other humans and make a difference in your life and others. And so everyone can have an experience with coaching that really helps them.
Now, so you do one-on-one coaching.
Yes.
That's primarily how you do it.
That's primarily how I work, is one-on-one.
High performance, one-on-one coaching.
We get busy.
High achievers. Do you ever do any group events where people could come to learn to know you? Is that something you've ever done?
Yes, sometimes I do host group events. I've gotten, with COVID, I always worked one-on-one, and that probably isolated me even further, because these deep conversations, they're quiet and they're intense and they're fun. So I don't do as much group, but sometimes I do get out and do group sessions, or I'll host a group event, because I want people to understand how much even collaboration with a question can make a difference. There's social learning that is important.
Right. So by the end of our show, I bet there's some things you'd like our listeners to know about coaching. Are there some goals you would have for this podcast?
Absolutely. One is just the clarity about what coaching is, kind of dispelling the myth, right? What is this thing that people are calling coaching, and how can it help you, right? That's the second piece, is like, if you're out there listening, where is your blind spot? Where is your struggle? Do you feel stuck? Maybe where do you feel foggy or unfocused? All of these are kind of those words that go along with, it might be time to talk to somebody and see, what's out there for you. And then where to begin is the piece that I also want to hit on in our session, because I think people don't know where to start. And sometimes it starts with taking our thoughts and just writing them down. Right. And
that's a great idea.
We'll talk about that. But yeah, those are the three things: just clarity about what it is, how it can help others, and how it can help our listeners. And then where would they begin? If today they took the first step, what might that first step look like?
Yeah. And what is the first step? Just writing everything down?
Yeah. So part of it is, when I work with people, they'll be like, I just, I feel overwhelmed, or I've got all these ideas. I'm not sure what to do. I'm not sure which one to start with. So one is, I think of our mental list, right? If we're not like kind of dumping them out on paper, I think of it like a paint bucket, just dump them out, right? And when you dump those thoughts on paper, something magical starts to happen where you can see it differently. Yeah. If we leave them up here, I think of it like a plate of spaghetti that we just keep putting more noodles on, and they just kind of slither off, and we throw it back on the top maybe a day or two later, maybe never, right? And some of those thoughts are very valuable. So I always encourage someone to start with journaling. Just journal your thoughts, journal your ideas. You don't know. I believe those are like downloads that are coming to you, especially from a creative perspective. Somebody gets it, like I had this idea that came to me, right? It woke me up in the middle of the night. I woke up with this idea. This sounds like a crazy idea. What should I do with it? Just write them down, because all of a sudden it puts a different energy in motion to see where you can take that idea. So
do you have them journal maybe even the negative things as well, the worries, the fears, the things that we're trying to conquer? Yes. Often I will work with people that they'll say, I'm just not getting any sleep. And I just want to say, energy is a core element of coaching. Because if you're working from a depleted energy tank, you're not going to go as far and as fast as you can. You're not going to show up for yourself, your friends, your family, those people that are important to you, your clients. So we work on energy, but sleep comes up often, because it's like, when you're overloaded, right, your mind's working overtime. And so sometimes people will wake up with those racing thoughts. And so journaling, whatever it is, and this is a practice that I love, and it sounds a little corny, but this is just how I do it. It's like, sometimes I lose my car keys. I'll use this example. And they're misplaced or somewhere. And I'll be like, okay, while I'm resting peacefully, I need you, brain, to be working on this solution and figuring out where my car keys are. That's kind of an example of how I self-talk it out. But if you write those thoughts down, like whatever those fears or worries are, all of a sudden you can start to begin to see different solutions. Here's a fear about maybe finances, or a fear about a relationship, or a fear of a failure, right? Or there's all kinds of fears that we can, and fears are real to people. So we want to kind of take that energy away from the fear. And I think when you write them down, it kind of just takes the oxygen out of fear a little bit. So a good starting point, write these things down, good or bad, whether it's an objective or a fear, and just start to evaluate them. Yeah. And that's a great self exercise, right? To begin thinking about what is important to you. Right. And most people don't ever even spend 5 minutes with their self, literally, to think about, hey, by the end of this year, where do I want to be? Right. Or what do I not like right now that I want to change? And I think that's an interesting thing, things that you want out of your life And it might be people, it might be things, it might be behaviors. I mean, what a great thing to do to write it. And I'm that guy. I've written things down forever, so I agree with that.
I mean, almost all personal development that you go back to, gratitude is a key element, like to wake up and be grateful for the sun, that you have fresh sheets, that you get to take a hot shower, that we live in America, in an amazing country, right? We have our problems, but this is still the greatest place on earth to be.
I think maybe that's a great starting point. I work in the financial world. And I like to talk to people about, okay, I know what you don't have. Let's talk about what you do have. Let's talk about these values, this life that you've had. And I think that's such a great starting point.
Yeah. And with your line of work, like money mindset comes up in sessions all the time, right?
Yeah, for
like
sure.
our beliefs, our what our parents and their habits and routines. Maybe somebody gave us a gift of their belief or thinking, and we just kind of carried it along like a little piece of luggage in our life. And it's okay to kick it out. Like you can get rid of that piece of luggage.
Yeah, we call that junk in the trunk. Like, is there stuff that we need to remove?
Yeah.
Yeah, good for you coaching that. So there are other coaches out in the world. There are a lot, and I know there's lots of kinds of coaches. What separates you? Why are you different?
Yes.
I mean, I know you're certified. I think that's a great starting point.
Yeah.
And you've got a great mentor in Aaron, and you've been at this quite a while. But let's differentiate from where you are and some of the others, not in a negative way,
Sure.
but in a positive way. What makes you different?
So a common question is, do I need a certified coach, right?
Yeah.
There's this, am I certified or not certified? When you hire a coach, I'll use this example. I had to go get a wedding gift sack, and I went to Dollar General, and on the door when I walked in was, we're hiring part-time cashiers for $22 an hour. So I'm a math person. I'm like, okay, they're $22,000 a year. You can get a part-time cashier. Well, the distinction in coaching is your skills, your experience, your certifications. It's a life accumulation that when you're sitting one-on-one with a coach, you're getting the benefit of a lot in that session.
Oh, yeah.
And so certification, like people have business certifications.
Sure.
Mine happens to be in high performance. I have several certifications. And the distinction in the high performance, which I love, is because we custom tailor it, right, to you. And it meets people where they are. But it was actually science studied, right? So they did the science work to say what makes high performers, and what did we learn about those elements of high performers? And they studied like millions of people and interviewed hundreds of leaders across the world. So it's science-based and outcome-driven. That's very different than a lot of other coaching. Sometimes there is coaching is like, well, here's my orientation, so let me share it with you and see how it goes for you, right? There is that kind of coaching. But this one is very specific. We're outcome-driven based on what you are saying is important.
Right. So we're going to take a break here, a commercial break in a second. But before we do, where can we find you on the social world and the internets? Where are you?
Yes. So you can find me on LinkedIn at Michelle Hammons. And you can also find me on my website, which is creativityplaybook.com.
Got it.
And on that site, we'll talk about a couple of tools that can help.
Okay. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Kenneth, who do you have for us today?
This episode is sponsored by Kenneth Bauckham Photography. Hi, my name is Kenneth Bauckham, and I'm here to help you bring your awesome ideas to life. I specialize in helping businesses explode their online presence through professional photography, video, and virtual event production with a rapid turnaround. It's commercial photo and video services with a personal touch. Learn more at kennethbauckham.com.
I'm not going to lie, one of our favorite advertisers. That dude is good. I don't know if you know
It's
him.
awesome.
I've heard of him once or twice.
Yeah, the podcast king. I like it. All right, we're here today with Michelle Hammons, and we're talking about high performance coaching. And I love that word. You can find her at creativityplaybook.com. You can find her on LinkedIn, and you're on Facebook as well. And
yes.
We can find your podcast again I guess we're on YouTube as well, and all these other spots. So you're kind of out there.
Yeah, out there. You can Google me.
You Google pretty well. Very, very cool. So we're talking today about high performance coaching, and we're talking about the coaching industry as well, but insights on coaching that I don't want to say the average person, but the average entrepreneur might not know.
Right.
But you've worked on this a long time. You've been on the inside of entrepreneurship. The thing I love about coaching, and I love repeating this, is we all need another set of eyes.
Yes, absolutely.
But we have a rear view mirror and a windshield, and it just gives us a different visual. And I'm a golfer, Favorite golfer in the world is Jack Nicklaus.
Yes.
And about every year of his career, he would go back to his coach, even when he was, great. And he would say, hey, I want to learn to play golf this year. And every year in January, they would work on the basics, the stance, the grip, all of it. And if it's good enough for the greatest athletes in the world, then it can be great enough for entrepreneurs trying to climb their own ladder.
Absolutely. And, any champion you look at, there's no way they would wake up without a coach.
No way, yeah.
When we think about, I think of like Simone Biles or Tiger Woods or,
oh my gosh, yeah.
Just all these amazing people out there. They know not only do they need one coach, they might need multiple coaches for their distinctions, for those techniques that they're looking for in their performance.
Right.
And that works true for entrepreneurs as well. Our performance is we show up with our business community and we're trying to make a difference most of the time.
Yeah.
And we're trying to have life and work balance, and we're trying to have a relationship sometimes with the spouse that we work with, which can be another whole level when we think about that.
Yeah, you definitely need some coaching on that.
Yeah. And so I think part of when we look through that entrepreneurial lens is a coach is your advocate. It's somebody you can kind of bring your frustrations to, bring your emotions to, that it's not going to be pouring it out on the dinner table every night with your spouse or your family, or it's just to help you have that advocacy for yourself. And I work with couples, and there's, amazing things that happen when couples work together in coaching. Or entrepreneurs work as individuals, but there's all these distinctions that they can find that are important to them. And so much, like I think entrepreneurs, as I said earlier, they're so resilient and they work long hours, and they often don't always take the time to take care of themselves.
Right.
And then they find themselves years later just maybe feeling burned out or stressed out, or maybe not really with a plan, good exit strategy, right? We all need an exit strategy. We're all going to retire someday. So these are the things that we work on holistically all the time.
So, well, tell us, then, what is a strategy or an insight that once people learn it is game-changing for them?
So for me, I go back to this element of time. Time is our most finite resource.
Truth.
And it's our most precious commodity. You can go make all the money in the world, but you cannot buy not 1 minute more of time. And so how we spend our time becomes this very important checkbook that we need to pay attention to. And I'm like, well, a lot of people pay attention to their finances, and you should, but you should pay attention to your time more. Because it's the thing that, depending on what you do with it, is going to create a lot of other results in your life, including relationships, finances, business success, experiences that you want to have in your life. So I always like to break it down, and this is one of the tools that I'll share later, but it's just getting clear on your time, right? Most of us that work, we're going to work, and I'd say entrepreneurs work probably 8 to 12 hours a day is the average, right. Somewhere in there. But let's just say it's 8. For this example, and maybe let's say we're getting good sleep, so that's 8. So you've knocked off 16 hours out of 24. You've got a finite amount of 8 hours, or probably a lot less, to get everything else done in your life.
Right.
Your social obligations, your family obligations, your health obligations, your cooking healthy meals, or all those things. It comes down to this like finite amount of time. So if you're not aiming your focus in a really laser sharp fashion, you're probably going to miss or let time leak or drift. That's going to be unproductive.
That's a great phrase, aiming your focus.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Ready, fire, aim, ready.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for me, I think it's that was my wake up call about time. In that moment, I was like, wow, if I only have 20 years left, how am I going to live it?
Right.
Right. I kind of put that mile marker out there on the horizon. And so sometimes I think we have a lot of time, or we'll, do this stuff when our kids graduate from high school or go to college, or we'll do this thing, next thing that happens,
as soon as I'm out
the
of
New
debt,
Year's resolutions. And so you've got to really take control of your time every day, and really own how you want to spend it. And we get caught up in other people's agendas. We get caught up in...
How much does this mess people's lives up?
Oh, the cell phone. So it's such a powerful tool. I'm a technology person. But if you're out there, I want you to go into your phone, and I know this Apple setting is settings, screen time, and I want you to turn it on. The average for a kid is 8 hours or more a day.
Wow.
The average for an adult is about 4 hours a day or more.
Wow.
So a common thing that I hear is, well, I don't have time to work on that.
Right.
Right? We come back to time, because time is our limiting commodity. Well, I love that tool. It's an awareness tool, not a judgment tool.
Right.
And I say, okay, I want you to really look because it'll tell you minute by minute. Are we on texting? Are we on Facebook? Are we on YouTube? Are we on TikTok? Are we on? And there's no judgment in social media. It's social. So carving out some time, if that's something you enjoy, is fine. But if you're spending hours on it, one, you're killing your relationships.
Right.
Because living out of your phone, and I hear this answer, but I use it for business. And I go, okay, let's evaluate that a little deeper because that may be true, but I bet there's some time you can reclaim. And even 10 minutes a day is 40 hours a year, and you can move the needle a lot.
That's an extra week a year.
That's an extra week a year.
Wow.
And so that's why I love to take time up and down the scale, because you might say you don't have time to do something, but if we could start taking back 10 and 15 minutes at a time, that's just drifting into nowhere land. You may not even have a conscious awareness about it. And we start applying it to your real dreams that put fire in your belly. And you're like, if this was possible, that's where we bring that possibility back. Because you got to have time to work on things.
Amen. And an extra week a year, there's your extra vacation.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot can happen in a week. That's when when
you can have concentrated focus. So now we have to change our habits, right? Because we may only get to do it 10 or 15 minutes a day.
Right.
But that over time is compounded. And you got to know what you got to do and jump in and jump out because you've got other priorities too.
Right. Wow. That's a pretty good tip right there.
Yeah, it is.
Laser focus, reduce Facebook, get a free vacation. I may have skipped a step in there. But So what's one mechanism or things, what's something somebody could learn that they could implement right away from you as a coach? If you were just talking to a crowd and you wanted to have one giveaway.
Yeah.
What's that one giveaway they could implement and see value pretty quickly?
So we talked about writing things down. I think taking control of your time is probably the primary, if you're not working with a calendar, and this isn't, when we talk about this, I don't want you to plan every minute of your day. That's not the goal here, not to have it all sliced and diced in the calendar, but it's like to have these time blocks that represent, is this what's important? Or what are you doing? Because it's the awareness piece of what are you doing that gives you the visibility to see, I can move this. I can change this. I don't have to serve on 5 boards in my community.
Right.
Maybe I need to pick the top one and gain 4 hours back a month, right? So, and all of those things are important. So it depends on the person. It depends on the priorities. But what I find is when people really assess their time, that they start to see, well, this was because I said yes to this thing, and this was because I said yes to that thing, and this was something that my friend asked me to help with, and my community asked me to do. And all of a sudden, this finite amount of time that we had is serving other people's agendas.
Yeah, and if you give up you find those other 4 hours a month, that's another 48 hours a year.
Exactly.
Now you got a 2-week vacation.
That's right. And that is exactly, that's why I like to blow the math up and down the scale, because it matters. It really does matter.
So you use the word time block. Just explain that very briefly for our listeners, because there's brilliance in this. And would you explain time block?
Yeah, so time blocking would be to give yourself focused time to work on something. And so for people who go into a business, like a retail store, probably 8 hours of their day, if they're open retail and they're managing the front counter, which hopefully if you're the entrepreneur and owner, you're doing some of that, but you have some other time for other things. So business administration, for example, getting the things done that need to be done, paying the bills, doing that stuff that's like non-revenue producing. Mm-hmm. You've got to have very dedicated time to work on those things. You also may have time to do customer relationships, for example, or nurturing new clients, whatever those things look like. In a business sense, are you working on the things that are going to keep your business viable? And are you making time for them? Because entrepreneurs, they'll say, well, I'm going to do the job that I'm doing during the day, and then I'll go home and work on the bills tonight, or I'll work on my email list, or I'll work on whatever those things are they're working on. And they don't really put them up in the business day, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so you take that time block and you lift it. But the time block is to establish with clarity, what am I going to do for between 9 and 10 this morning? And what is my intention in this hour? And then how am I going to measure where I'm at the end of it?
Right.
Those are those little things. And I love that when we look at the clock, right? You can have a 60-minute block. You can have 4 blocks of 15. You can have 2 blocks of 30. You can have 3 blocks of 20. You can have 6 blocks of 10. If you start getting more finite about your task list, you can break that time down where it starts to get more efficient. Now, most of us are underestimating how long things are going to take, and we're overcommitted, and you cannot see that. That's a blind spot because you're not writing it down.
Got it.
And so that writing, capturing a calendar, whether it's on paper or in a digital format, is important. The second piece of that is if you don't do what you said you were going to do, which happens all the time because this is a life roadmap and life is going to happen to us.
Sure.
We're going to get knocked off our schedule. You're going to want to go and give yourself credit for what you did do.
Right.
It was probably important. It was probably a competing interest to the other things that you didn't think about. That's why writing things down helps.
So is that where the difficulty integrating these things are? I mean,
Yes.
integrating change is the challenge. I think sometimes maybe you show us what to change or how to change it, but it's got to become a habit though, right?
Yeah, it's got to become a habit. And by the way, we have to be a little kinder to ourselves. Like we're going to fumble, we're going to stumble, we're going to fall, we're going to knock ourselves down, right? We're not going to be perfect every day. So it's a work in progress. That's why that sustained improvement over the long term is such an important phrase because we're not looking for perfection.
Right.
And
but a coach will help you integrate because they can, if you're meeting once a week or twice a month or however that works out, the coach can help integrate these changes through maybe accountability?
Yeah, definitely accountability. We check in, celebrate wins, right? We want to see where things are going. And hey, where did it not go so well?
Yeah, so give me an example. What would you say to somebody like me, if I'm failing to integrate something, what is the verbiage that a coach would use to go, hey, Cash, pull your head out? But what would your words be?
So do you have an example, like a real example of a challenge maybe?
Everything's challenging.
Yeah.
In business, just trying to juggle all the plates. And maybe one of them is just building your CRM better.
Yeah.
That's something we're working on right now, building our database better.
So CRMs can be very robust tools.
Yeah.
And they can be like an empty Sam's warehouse when you start, right?
Yeah.
And you got to build it and put every aisle the way you want it. So it's one to define the priorities, right? What's most important first, right? And start working in a priority order. The other thing is you said, I have many things to do. So I often hear, I talked to someone yesterday, I put many things on my list. I go, how many is many? Well, there's probably 25. Well, I can tell you if you're out there and you're putting 25 things on your list, you're starting with a very unreasonable expectation. Our recommendation is 3 key needle-moving things a day.
Okay.
In high performance.
Right.
So we're going to focus in on those. It doesn't mean those other little things don't get sprinkled in, but when you get down to that time, we want you to be working on the needle-moving things, not the task mastering. This feels good, and I get to check it off my list, and I feel some fun endorphins that flow. So
what is the next step for our listeners? If they like the idea of coaching, what do they do next with you?
Yeah. So just like we're sitting here having a conversation and exploring what's going on, what are you thinking about? What's on your mind? What are your priorities? It's just a possibility session. I go back to that word.
Possibility session. I like that.
And it's someone can book that on my calendar, and we just spend 30 minutes saying, okay, where are you at? What's prompting you to think you might want to have this conversation? Usually there's been a change or something's going on that's stirring. And so we try to just add as much value in that 30 minutes that we spend together, just breaking it down and then evaluating, would this be a good thing to take a next step with? Or are there other resources or things that might help you? We all start somewhere.
So are there people that probably shouldn't get a coach? I mean, you meet people and maybe they're not ready. How do you delicately say that to somebody like, I don't think this is right for you? How does that go?
Yeah, so that's part of the conversation, right? Well, are you ready to make some changes? Because if there's not a readiness and a growth mindset, then it's a waste of money, right? I wouldn't recommend someone do it. And again, sometimes depending on where we are in our life season and timeline, like I remember way back when I started in personal development, it was starting with books. Yeah. It was starting with, I'm going to date myself, cassette tapes, from Nightingale Conant. And so so you don't have, again, kind of going back to the financial investment, the level you invest in as a coach, you're going to get the level back in return for the dreams that you're going to leave on hold if you don't have support. But you can start in other places. So not everybody's in that position. So sometimes it's a resource recommendation. Hey, I think you need to work on refining your schedule and routine, and then we'll come into the practice of coaching, right? But we can do that as part of it too. It's just sometimes people start at different places.
Okay. So Do you see, is there one common thing that entrepreneurs, like that's the most common thing that they need coaching on? I mean, you said some great things, writing everything down. I think that's a gem. Managing your time. Is there one thing that seems to be the most common discussed item?
Absolutely.
And I'm asking this for a friend.
Yeah. There's two things. One, I believe as a creative that if in my mind, I can't see it as clear as a photograph, I know I won't achieve it. Like that's how clear it has to be for me personally. Now that may not be true for others. So vision, right? The clear vision. But the clarity is the key. If you feel stuck or foggy or fuzzy or not sure what to do next, you need to dig for more clarity.
Okay.
And clarity has another word that's its best friend, and it's called specificity.
Ooh, okay.
So clarity says, this year I am going to grow in my business by 20%.
Okay.
Specificity says, I'm going to grow my email list by 10,000 people, and I'm going to make routine offers to provide my services or whatever those things may be to get me there, right? There's that next layer or two or three down in specificity is where entrepreneurs get stuck.
Got it. So is the specificity how to do the thing on some level?
Well, it's the clarity that takes it down from this kind of global thinking down to the roadmap.
Okay.
Right. We're going to land it on the highway is what I say.
Okay.
And know where you're driving towards.
Very cool. So for those people ready to go to the next level with you, I mean, how can I don't know. I think this is such a beautiful topic. And I hope we can revisit this again because I don't think this is a one show kind of topic. I think coaching is so valuable. Like, I don't know, man. I mean, this transforms lives, right?
It does. It transforms lives. It literally has saved people in their marriages.
Yeah.
The relational side of it is huge. But it also saves businesses.
Right.
Because if you don't have that insight, that one insight might be the difference of you keeping the doors open or closing them.
Well, that's a great thing to say. When you say that this saves businesses and marriages, do you feel like this business frustration that many people have has a negative compound effect on their lives and their personal lives?
Sure. When you're under financial stress, for example, right?
For sure.
I did credit counseling earlier in my career, and financial stress will take you down. Any stress will take you down. Yeah. There's plenty of medical data that says, hey, the stress has an impact on our health. So if you are feeling those stressors, it's like, okay, what can we do about it? And I guarantee you, like there's 8 billion people on this planet. There's other warm, friendly, loving people out there that have been there. They've done it just a few steps more than you have.
Right.
And a coach can help you. But also, if you're not ready for that, you get a mentor, get a coach, get a counselor. There's distinctions in all of those things.
Yeah, I think everybody needs a mentor. And what most people have is a tormentor, which is their alter ego who's sitting there judging them.
That's we do it to ourselves, right? When we
sure.
think about how hard we are on ourselves as entrepreneurs.
We are here with Michelle Hammons and the creativityplaybook.com. You can find her all over Facebook and LinkedIn as well. Now, you've given us so much today, and thank you so much for your insight. Do you have an extra business nugget for it? This is like 9 business nuggets you've already given us. Is one of those the most important?
Yeah, don't stay stuck. Be humble enough to ask for help. Raise your hand. It's not a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of anything other than we all need help in this world.
Right.
And if you're brave enough to ask, you're going to take yourself into a new place by doing it. And so don't sit there alone, stuck. Ask for help.
That is great wisdom. The money right there. I like it.
That's the money.
I think that's great. Asking for help is not giving up. Asking for help is refusing to give up. And if you're looking for help to go to the next level, Michelle Hammons is somebody you may want to visit with, have a cup of coffee with, and find out, hey, here's where I am. Here's where I want to go. Do you see a different route? Did we get that all right?
You got it.
Michelle, thank you for being here today. What a great show. Can't wait. This one I'll watch again. So thank you for being here today at Cashflows. We are here to promote each other, to love on one another, and to push the needle in business, life, entrepreneurship, or other endeavors. And we bring in experts in that field, and we hope you've had a great day. Remember, today's a great day to forgive somebody. Forgiveness is not about them. It is about you and living a life without all of that pressure of holding on to a grudge. Kenneth, thank you for another great show. Thanks to our listeners and our watchers. and to our friends out there in Cashflows world. I'm Cash Matthews. We're glad you're here today. Thank you.
That's our show for today. Stay tuned for another riveting edition of Cashflows.